Israel Update with Gadi, Taub, and Mike Doran. Hello, welcome to Israel Update, Tablet's prestigious podcast. It's 192 days to the war. It's April 16th. What's happening to my English? It's a Tuesday, and it's our first recording after the Iranian attack on Israel. Mike is in Washington. I happen to be in transit in Miami, which explains to those who are watching the video why my background is so bland. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Gadi. I'm not just in Washington. I'm in Washington at the headquarters.
Okay. I thought we might do one session without mentioning that piece of secret information. However, now that you revealed it.
Yes, I'm at the headquarters. And listen, everything is all about the Iranian attack and the Israeli response. So I don't have instead of going and listing all of the news reports, I'll just tell you that the War Cabinet met yesterday to discuss retaliatory options in response to the Iranian missile and drone attack on Sunday morning. The impression that's been created in the Israeli media, the impression of that meeting is that the Israeli political leadership has in fact decided to retaliate, but it is leaving open the nature and the timing of the retaliation. No Israeli political official has spoken on the record to confirm any decision. Prime Minister Netanyahu was indirectly quoted by Israeli radio as telling Likud ministers that Israel would retaliate, and American officials were indirectly quoted by Defense Minister Gallant as speaking in similar terms in a conversation of Secretary of Defense Austin. Alternatively, Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi said publicly yesterday that the Iranian missile and drone strike would be met with a response. So the whole question here, Gadi, is what are the Israelis going to do, and what's the American attitude toward it? Because the Americans are urging caution, if not total restraint, on the Israelis. So I think that's what we have to really discuss today. Between the necessity of responding and the opposition of the Americans to respond.
And this is the stage is certainly yours, Mike, because this is a subject you've been talking about for 10 years now, more than 10 years, I think. But before you do, I'll just mention a few things about the Israeli scene. One thing is that for Israeli ears, the phrase "we will retaliate when and where we will see fit" is reminiscent of another war. This is the first Gulf War in 1991, where Americans urged Israel to stay put, and Prime Minister Shamir did indeed stay put while a few Scads were falling on Tel Aviv. Back then, it was considered a wise thing to do and something that only a very strong Likud, right-wing prime minister can do. This time, I have to say, it doesn't sound the same. And the second thing I have to say about the Israeli scene is, to my great disappointment, it is full of hallelujah to Joe Biden. Once again, Joe Biden has saved the day. Here we are, all the missiles and drones, save one or two or three, were intercepted. We will have to wait and learn which ones were not, because they were not all of the same kind. There were some advanced missiles that know how to evade our system, and apparently these were the ones that got through. You have connections with military analysts. We'll probably hear more about that in coming episodes, but the celebratory mood in Israel belongs, I think, basically to this progressive elite that we keep mentioning, who just wishes this war to be over. I'll refer our listeners and viewers to the last episode where we once again explained, or you once again explained, how the Israeli press is misled. The idea that there's a small war going in Gaza, and we just need to shut that down in order to let Biden conduct the real big war, which is the war against Iran. This is, of course, not what is happening, but the Israeli press is buying this wholesale and are clearly on the side of the Americans, and don't let those crazy right-wingers retaliate now, or we will ruin the American coalition against Iran. Mike, the floor is yours.
I thought you were going to say, when you said it's reminiscent of something from the past, we should actually talk about the difference between the Gulf War and this war. But I thought you were going to quote Ben Gurion. Apinkas Patuach ve'yad roshemet.
Ben Gurion right there behind you in sunglasses that belong to the Blues Brothers. Apinkas Patuach ve'yad roshemet. The book is open and the hand is writing. I think it was, I'm not sure it was Ben Gurion. Are you sure you're a Ben Gurion?
Yeah, it was Ben Gurion. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a Mapai phrase that we still use as a Mapai phrase. I didn't attribute it to Ben Gurion.
And anyway, it means I'm going to respond at a time and place of my choosing. Everything you've done against me is recorded, and there will be an answer to it.
But in folklore, it doesn't mean the same, Mike. In folklore, it means you're just being a coward. It means instead of responding, you're just talking.
Oh, really? Oh,
so Israelis, when they use ani give bazman uvamakom she'ireli, that's the way to walk away from a fight.
No, he said, I'm sure he said it in the 1950s when Egypt was carrying out its terror attacks against Israel. And for whatever reason, I think because of great power pressure, he couldn't do something at that moment. And he said, we're gonna. Anyway, I'll look it up and I'll get back to you on that. But let me shift to what happened this weekend and why I agree with you, Gadi. No surprise there that we shouldn't be celebrating too much. But let's start by giving the Israeli military and the Americans as well their due. It was an incredibly impressive display of defensive military technology. It was an incredibly successful defensive technology display. It was an incredible vindication of the move in CENTCOM over the last few years. One, to bring Israel into the U.S. Central Command, the American Military Command in the Middle East. Israel used to be in the European Command because its presence in CENTCOM was deemed disruptive to all of the Arab partners of the United States. Israel was brought into CENTCOM, and then CENTCOM has been working to create integrated missile defense, which means that Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, all the other Middle Eastern countries are all looking at a common radar picture. Their radar feeds, their sensors are all feeding into a common network. So Israel is able to respond to these missiles coming from Iran because it's getting the feed all the way from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and elsewhere. And that was
doesn't it also give the Americans another leverage on the Israeli military, another safety pin for our trigger?
We're getting there, man. We're getting there. Yes, absolutely. It builds up a dependency. It's not. It's a wonderful thing, but it's also a dependency. But there are three reasons why after admitting that this was very impressive and very successful as a defense, and I'm not sure that it was just the progressive elites in Israel that are saying how amazing this is. I talked to an Israeli friend of mine on Sunday who's not particularly political, and his overwhelming feeling was just relief on Sunday morning, because there was so much tension building up on Saturday night, and nobody knew what to expect. And then he woke up the next day to news that that basically only there's the one Bedouin girl is fighting for her life, but other than that, there were no injuries. So it's complete sense of relief and safety. And so there's got to be gratitude in a situation like that. But there are three reasons why people should not be
Celebrating.
overly celebrating, seeing this as a victory. This was not a victory. This was a technical military success, but it was not a victory for three reasons. Number one, Iran successfully changed the rules of the game. Until now, they were afraid to attack Israel because they were afraid of what the Israeli response would be. They were afraid that maybe the Americans would come in behind the Israelis. They were afraid of what the international community might do. And because of the way they played their hand diplomatically, and because of the Biden administration's desire to get along with them, they were able to turn this attack into a legitimate action that engendered no significant response. The Americans kind of okayed it ahead of time. The Americans
what does that mean? There were diplomatic sources in Ankara saying that Iran passed a message along to the Americans who just said, don't exaggerate, meaning they okayed the strike. And then they went over to the Israeli side and said, hold it. So is this, can we verify that this is a case where?
Well, we know, let's, I think those reports through the Turks, I will actually work to verify them, and I can do that through my own sources, but I strongly suspect that those are true, that the Americans at some point said, choose your targets very carefully, be careful, something like that.
You know that the Americans warned their own staffs in Israeli American facilities to stay in the Tel Aviv and Jerusalem areas. That was very jarring to Israelis who said, do they know what the targets will be?
Yeah, well, if that was the case, it was probably because through intelligence, rather than actual, mill-to-mill cooperation between the Iranians and the Americans. I don't believe that took place.
But also they may have very intimate knowledge of where what the density of the protective umbrella of Iron Dome and other intercepting systems is.
Well, one of the things that the Iranians did, they telegraphed their punches. I mean, it was like the Iranians did against the Israelis what the Americans did against the Houthis and the Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Syria when we're coming, guys, we're coming. They had this huge wind-up. We're gonna punch you. We're gonna punch you. And the other thing that the Iranians did, in order to minimize the international backlash, they made a big point, very unusual for the Iranians, to justify their action under international law, to emphasize that they were going to carry out attacks against military targets. So if you're in Jaffa, you don't have any reason to believe that there's a military target in Jaffa. Maybe the Kiryat, but that's not in Jaffa. So
also some of these vehicles were very, very slow and took hours to arrive, which created
that's the drones, yeah, the drones,
which created great tension in Israel, which it should have calmed people down. But I say these were just launched and will be arriving 5 hours. This is the first
8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. But they timed them. This was a very serious attack. There's a lot of nonsense in the New York Times and elsewhere that the Iranians the Iranians tried to do this to be purely symbolic, purely political, not to actually hit anything. They shot ballistic missiles, they shot cruise missiles, and they shot drones. The drones take 8 hours to get there. That's not true of the ballistic missiles and the drones and the cruise missiles. And they sent them from multiple different areas, and they sent them to arrive at the same time so as to overwhelm the sensors. Now, they didn't overwhelm the sensors, which is good, but that was the goal. For sure, no doubt about it.
And they collected valuable intelligence. Don't they know more about our systems now?
Oh, they know. I'm coming to that. So because I'm going to give you 3 reasons why this is not a victory. Number one, they know. So to finish the thought though about the Americans, and we don't have to rely on this report through the Turks. We know that the Israelis were going to preempt, and this is according to the Israeli press, reliable reports in the Israeli press. The Israelis were going to preempt. And the Americans told them, don't preempt. The Israelis want to retaliate, as we're seeing in the press this morning. and the Americans are saying, don't retaliate, right? So this is the Americans are allowing the change of the game, the change of the rules by the Iranians is being permitted. It's being endorsed by the Americans. You know, the Biden doctrine. The Biden doctrine is that
the
Iran
Biden doctrine is called "Don't," isn't it?
It's called "Don't"
The
to
Monroe
Israel.
Doctrine is about the Western Hemisphere. Biden's doctrine is "Don't."
Don't to Israel, though, only because the Biden doctrine is that Iran can attack any country at once with drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles, but you can't attack Iran. Iran is off limits under an American protective umbrella. This started, of course, with the JCPOA. The American policy put the Iranian nuclear program under an American, and that American umbrella is also over Hezbollah to a certain extent. Israel is, remember, the don't to Israel after October 7th was don't go attack Hezbollah.
Yeah, and also it's very hard to attack Hezbollah as long as Amos Hochstein is running around. We don't want to.
He's running around trying to cut. Yeah, he's telling Amos Hochstein is media. Biden's, for those people who have just tuned into our to Israel update. The Amos Hochstein is Amos Hochstein is the point man of Joe Biden working on a Hezbollah-Israel peace agreement, according to which his plan, Israel will make territorial concessions along the border with Lebanon. The international community will channel millions, if not billions, of dollars into southern Lebanon, into Hezbollah's coffers. And in return, Hezbollah will move its shock troops up north of the Litani. This is pie in the sky, never going to happen, but it sends a message to the Israelis that you should solve the problem with Hezbollah not through military means, but through our auspices, diplomatic means, which is a way of putting a protective umbrella over Hezbollah.
Yeah.
That's one. Okay, so that's one thing. Legitimated a change in the rules of the game. Second thing is that Jordan is now in the crosshairs. The Jordanians put their head up above the parapet. Jordan is a country where the majority of the population are Palestinians. There's no love for Israel in Jordan popularly. Certainly no love for what Israel's doing in Gaza right now. The Jordanians were forced to show themselves to be working to prevent Israel shielding Israel from attack by the Iranians. I predict that in the next month or two, we're going to see more and more pressure by the Iranians on the Jordanians in order to create cracks between Jordanian society and the regime. These are serious issues. The Americans, with the view of the attack that says, you know, there's a 99% interception rate, and that's a big win, and we should pocket that win and go home. This is like in Vietnam. In the Vietnam War, the U.S. military was criticized for using the number of dead Viet Cong as a metric for success. You know, we killed 100 today, we killed 150, we killed this many, therefore we are winning. This is a political fight first and foremost, and the success on the battlefield, the success of the weapon systems is much less important than the political impact it created. And the Iranians came away from this with their relationship with the United States intact, not damaged. The Chinese came in today, and they said they're looking forward to more cooperation with the Iranians, and that the Iranians were justified in using this is the Chinese foreign minister, in attacking Israel. And that Jordan is now going to be in the crosshairs. Saudi Arabia might be in the crosshairs as well. Final thing, Gadi, is that because of the use of their airspace by Israelis and Americans. Yes, the use of their participation in the missile defense system.
Yeah.
The Iranians wanted to penetrate the airspace of the Jordanians, and because the Saudis were part of the system of collecting information on the incoming and passing that to Israel and to the Americans and to those who were carrying out the who are launching the interceptors. That's participation in the operation. The final thing is that the defense economics are really lopsided. So the Israelis spent on Saturday night $1.5 billion. The Iranians can launch missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles at this tempo for weeks. They have a huge stockpile of these things. They can continue to supply the Russians for their activities in Ukraine, and they can launch these at the Israelis for a very long time. So the Israelis will have to spend $1.5 billion a night. It's not long before that turns out to be real money. And it's not long before the Israelis will be out of interceptors because they don't have the defense industrial base to keep up with it. Because this is what we've been talking about, Gadi. This is an offense-dominant military regime. It's a regime that favors a balance of power, that favors offensive action by the Iranians. You cannot, listen to me, this is defense science. You cannot counter an offense-dominant regime with purely defensive measures, which is what the Americans are arguing you can do. You can't do it. It's basic science. So the other thing
this is so crucial, and I've heard it from you, Mike, since this is so crucial, a few sentences explain this phrase to those who haven't heard you on it yet.
So, Gadi, you have a Kevlar vest, and I have a pistol. Your Kevlar vest costs $200. I shoot my 6 rounds into your Kevlar vest. Your Kevlar vest stops 5 of them. 1 of them gets through. Your Kevlar vest operated above the spec. It did better than it was supposed to by stopping all 5 bullets. It's a fantastic Kevlar vest. The problem is you're dead because 1 of my bullets got through. If the Iranians don't telegraph their punches, throw everything they've got at the Israelis, and keep throwing everything they've got at the Israelis, some of these ballistic missiles are going to get through sooner or later, and there's going to be a lot of damage. That's it. That's number 1. But number 2, your Kevlar vest costs $2,000. Each one of my bullets costs $2. So it costs me $12 to shoot, and I ruin your $2,000 Kevlar vest. The defense economics don't work. And sooner or later, you're gonna be hurt by what I'm doing. We had a great night on Saturday night. The Iranians are shooting. The Russians are shooting Iranian drones in Ukraine. When the Russians first began shooting Shahids at the Ukrainians had a 90% or 95% interception rate. Today, they have an 80% interception rate because the Russians and the Iranians, with each one of these attempts, is gathering intel, as you said, and they're getting better and better. Here's something else to consider. Today there's missile defense assets are not unlimited. They're very limited, and so Ukraine has to decide where to deploy its missile defense assets, and it has moved them to protect its major population centers like the capital, Kiev, and as a result, they don't have enough to cover the troops on the front line. So the troops are exposed because they're using their missile defense to protect the population. And the next time, the Iranians might decide to attack Americans and Israel at the same time. Does the U.S. have enough missile defense assets to protect all its bases in the Middle East? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So if everything is concentrated on Israel, what's left open? The Iranians are studying this. They're studying all of it. There's got to be another round because they took no punishment for what they did here. This great humiliation of having all of their missiles and drones shot down gave them a lot of information so that next time that won't be the case.
So you don't see them saying this is enough. You don't see them thinking we've made the point, we've changed the rules, and now we don't need to go any further.
When has that ever been true of the Iranians? When have they ever said, okay, we made our point, we're going to go home and have peace now? When?
No, not have peace, but just wait for the other side to make a mistake, because what is true of the Iranians is that they are far, far more sophisticated than any of the other players in the scene.
They're the most sophisticated in these matters. They are the most sophisticated players in the world, maybe, but certainly in the Middle East. They're more sophisticated than we are. They're more sophisticated than the Israelis even. It's the Israelis used to be a lot smarter about these things.
No,
I think
yeah. When you said even, it was in Hebrew we say tzavat li balev. It pricked me because we're no longer sophisticated.
You're going to get.
I don't know if you know, but Akiva Bigman on the Midah website exposed a document by Herzi Halevi about how great our protection from Gaza against Gaza is, and you read it. It's a Boy Scout document with no substance and no sophistication. I'll just wait. This was before October 7th. Wait, Mike. I just want to edit a promo and say that today we were supposed to air a pre-recorded conversation with Professor Kobi Michaeli about the Iranian strategy to destroy Israel, the Iranian Hamas strategy. We're not doing it. We're doing an episode on the road because this is such an urgent matter, the Iranian attack, but we will screen it separately. So wait for it next week, because there has been, not everybody in Israel is as unsophisticated as the IDF, and there are some very serious analysts of Iranian strategy. Yes, I
do think we have to remember two things in defense of the IDF. They are in a bear hug from the Americans. It's very hard to know how to handle this. There are very difficult decisions here. And secondly, to the extent to which the Israelis are not as sophisticated as the Iranians, I believe that will change. The Israelis are going to, under the pressure of events, the Israelis are going to rediscover some of their roots and some of their under the pressure of necessity. They're gonna get clever again.
Yeah,
they turned into Americans, into the 51st state for a little while. It's not going to last.
Yeah, but we will have to peel off a whole layer of rotten progressive elites, which, it's getting depressing from week to week. I'm also as optimistic as you, but I think that this will that there are other shocks coming. Anyone who hoped that October 7 has just cleared the map and everything will change, no, it will take time. And let me just tell you just a symbolic thing. Tamir Heyman, you remember Tamir Heyman? He was head of
head of INSS.
Yeah, he's now the head of INSS. He used to be the chief of intelligence of the IDF. We screened, I think, in one of our shows, a funny recording of him saying, people are calling me saying there's going to be a Hamas attack, with hysterical phone calls. Stop it. There's never going to be a Hamas attack. And then he said, this is an intelligence guy. He said, I don't need to study the intelligence because I understand the interests. And so, but this is not the whole story. The story is that Minister of Defense, Minister of Security is the right word for it in Hebrew.
By the way, are you sure that was Tamir Heyman who said that?
I am absolutely positive and can bring you the tape. I have it saved. And he said it in INSS. There's a Hebrew quip that anything with the background of INSS is probably a false statement. So
I think you're I will be happy to be proven wrong about but I think you're misattributing that to Tamir Heyman. But anyway,
I am. We are going to get back to this. To you.
If you're right, I will say you were right and I was wrong.
Yeah. So prepare the statement for next time.
I'll get it ready.
Because I've screened it so many times. But what I was going to say is that Minister of Security Gallant took Tamir Heyman as the head of the team, or the deputy head of the team, for planning the day after in Gaza. So you understand these Oslo people, the whole Oslo attitude, which is so ingrained inside the security establishment of Israel ever since Oslo, ever since the 90s. So I'll just say one word about that, is these people dominate the security establishment. And just now, a few weeks ago, the cabinet approved a round of appointment by Herzi Halevi, who should be home by now. But now you understand what Herzi Halevi, probably the most clearly responsible for October 7 official, is now perpetuating the conceptia, the wrong groupthink inside the IDF. So what I'm saying is it will take time until this changes. I'll just, if you allow me, just a short anecdote that you have heard from me at the Hudson headquarters. When I interviewed Yuval Bloomberg in Hebrew, who wrote a book called The Oslo Trap, and he said the reason the army has become so dovish is that the Oslo Trap began with the people that Shimon Peres liked, which were academics, which were, they called them the blazers, the people the visionaries and peaceniks dreaming dreams in air-conditioned rooms, and Rabin never trusted them. So when the Oslo track was behind Rabin's back, when it was revealed, Rabin took it over. And who does Rabin, the general, trust? He trusts the army people. And so he removed all of Peres's blazers and put generals instead. And ever since, Yuval Bloomberg said, the army is committed to this peacenik framework, and the army is dealing in peace diplomacy instead of instilling an ethos of victory. So what I'm saying is it will take time until the IDF, as we say in Hebrew, yachlif disket, until it changes the operating system.
Okay. All right. There was something I wanted to say before, but I lost track of what it was.
I shouldn't be speaking so much on our podcast.
No. I didn't mean that.
I can tell you what you were saying.
I wasn't
saying
being
the
vindictive.
Iranians. You were saying the Iranians were the smartest, and that there was one wave that they did, and I asked maybe they will make do with that, and you said that can never happen.
No, there'll be another one. The question now we should talk a little bit about is what will the Israelis do to retaliate, and how will they retaliate? And that is not clear. So let me just lay out what I see as the problem that the military and Netanyahu have, since the Americans are pushing them not to. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, or Thursday before last, President Biden called up Prime Minister Netanyahu and read him the Riot Act and said, send an empowered team to Cairo to negotiate with Hamas, open up the passages and let more humanitarian aid in, and get ready for a ceasefire. We want a ceasefire in Gaza. And so they pulled all the maneuver forces out of the Gaza Strip. The Israelis did. Netanyahu sent an empowered team to Cairo, and he opened up the passages with more humanitarian aid. And what happened? Hamas didn't cut the deal. It didn't cut the deal, and it changed its terms. It saw the Americans putting all this pressure on the Israelis, and it thought, hey, I can pocket the American pressure and demand more. So they offered up less hostages and more demands about ending the war and so on, completely unreasonable demands that didn't have a chance of success. And so now, if you're Netanyahu, what you're hoping to do is to leverage last weekend to get the Americans to change their tune and approve the campaign in Rafah. That's one thing you want. The other thing you want is to be able to be more aggressive with Hezbollah in the north. Is one way of answering Iran. I think they actually have to answer Iran in Iran, but they'd also like to answer Iran out of Iran, and they'd like to do it particularly in Lebanon, where the greatest military threat to Israel really is coming from a conventional military threat is coming from Lebanon. They want to change the balance of power there. They're going to have to do something inside Iran itself, because Iran went after Israel and Israel proper. They're going to do something, in my prediction, low signature in Iran. I don't know what that means. Low signature, high impact. I have no idea what the military will come up with, or the Mossad, but they'll do something there as well. So that's what I think is going on right now. Netanyahu is trying to get Biden to say, okay, go take him out, go ahead and do something in Rafah, and he's probably also trying to negotiate about Lebanon.
Mike, before we end, we're running out of time. Before we end, there's a question that I've been meaning to ask you for a while. Isn't there at least some good news in the fact that this war has been exposed for what you have been saying it is from day one? It is a war with Iran, and the American administration is trying to frame it as a Israeli-Palestinian war that has an Israeli-Palestinian solution, but and Biden, when he first visited Israel, vetoed the idea that Israel demanded to say that Iran is involved. Now everybody knows Iran is involved. Is that not a step forward in some way?
Yes, it's a step forward in some way, but let's not exaggerate it, because what we need, I repeat, the only way to counter an offense-dominant regime is with offensive countermeasures. You can't do it purely defensively. The question is, does this increased awareness around the world, in Israel, in the United States, that Iran is orchestrating everything and that the Biden administration is restraining Israel in order to get along with Iran, does that increase the possibility that the United States will carry out offensive countermeasures or will support Israel in offensive countermeasures against the Iranians? And so far, the answer is no. When Joe Biden, when his advisors come and they start talking about the possibility of offensive countermeasures, Biden has three major reasons for not wanting them. Number one, offensive countermeasures could be economic. They don't just have to be military in nature. If the first thing that Biden should do is to end all of the Iranian oil sales to China, like Trump did. But that'll raise the price of oil globally. Biden doesn't want oil prices to go up. He doesn't want gas prices at the pump to go up between now and November. That's important for his reelection prospects. It also means that it's going to throw into complete chaos his green energy policy, which also depends on
which is now in great order.
Yeah, but it's going to be even in less order. Because in order to keep oil prices down, he'll have to encourage people to pump more oil, to frack more, all of these things. He can't do any of that. So that's one reason. The second reason is that the U.S. military forces in the Middle East are at an all-time low in terms of, generally speaking, in terms of their numbers. The military doesn't want to increase the size of the forces in the Middle East. They've got a hot war in Europe, and they've got a potential war in Taiwan. They want a quiet life in the Middle East. And Biden, again, for electoral reasons, doesn't want to have a big military buildup in the Middle East. And thirdly, he's afraid Iran is going to make a rush for a nuclear weapon. And that
would not be good before November.
That will not be good before November. It won't be good at any time. And again, it will also require a military response. So all of this very quickly becomes American military action. He doesn't want to take it. He wants it to go away. And the easiest way to make it go away, especially between now and November, is to shut down Israel's war in Gaza. So,
yeah. So the clash or the friction we've been discussing for half a year now is continuing. Mike, I have a surprise for you to end instead of our dumbest take on the news. Are you ready?
Is it Tamir Haiman saying?
Yes, it is. We are not at the beginning of a multi-front war with Hamas. Forget it. We will
Okay, Tamir Haiman Masbir.
No, Mike is always right.
I'm wrong.
I should turn Tamir Haiman off, which I'm not succeeding to do.
Gadi?
Mike is always right. If there's any discrepancy between what Mike says and reality, this means reality is inaccurate. This is a joke.
Absolutely. No. Gadi, I was wrong and you were right.
Okay. It doesn't happen once in a blue moon, but
I was wrong. I was wrong and you were right. Okay.
Mike, we admire your courage to say this. So
you know what? When in my marriage, There occasionally, very occasionally, rarely, very rarely, I'm right and my wife is wrong. It rarely happens. But when it does happen, if I force her to say that I was right and she was wrong, she makes me feel very small and petty for having done it.
Okay, that's all from us today, and we will be back, or rather, Professor Kobi Michaeli will be back. I interviewed him in English for you for the next episode next week of Israel Update. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.